You know that green siren, right? It feels like it's on every corner of the planet. But this isn't really about coffee. It's a story about vision, sure, but it's also about a kid from the projects who just refused to let his past write his future. Let's dive in. So let's start with a number. $100 billion. That's roughly the scale of the Starbucks empire today. It's just massive. But to really get how that happened, we've got to go back, way back, to a place with zero money, no safety net, and honestly, not a whole lot of hope. All right, so our story doesn't kick off in some fancy boardroom. Nope, it starts in the gritty public housing projects of New York in the 1950s with a young boy named Howard Schultz. Howard was born into a family that was always just trying to keep its head above water. They were packed into a tiny apartment in the Canarsie projects, and worrying about money wasn't a monthly thing, it was a daily reality. But it was one specific moment, one event, that would light a fire in him that basically never went out. Howard was only 7 years old. His dad, a World War II vet, was working as a delivery driver. One day, he slips on a patch of ice and shatters his hip and ankle. And back then, there was no health insurance for him, no workers' comp. The company just fired him. And that image of his father broken on the couch, stripped of his dignity, that became the engine for everything Howard would do for the rest of his life. He knew he had to get out. He saw sports as his only ticket and managed to get a football scholarship. But even at college, the struggle was far from over. He was taking on loans, working odd jobs, and, get this, he even sold his blood plasma just to make ends meet. That's the kind of grit we're talking about, right from the very beginning. So after college, all that hard work starts to pay off. He gets a good job, but then a business trip comes along that would completely flip his life upside down, and as it turns out, the entire coffee industry along with it. So he's working for a houseware company, and he notices this one little shop in Seattle is ordering a crazy number of their coffee makers. He's intrigued, so he flies out to see it for himself. The second he walks into that original Starbucks, he said he just felt hooked. It took him a whole year to convince the founders to hire him, but in 1982, he finally joined the team. Okay, so a year later, he's on a business trip in Milan, Italy. And this is it. This is his eureka moment. He sees that in Italy, these little coffee bars, they weren't just places to get a quick caffeine fix, they were community hubs. He called it the third place. You know, not home, not work, but this other place where human connection was really the main thing on the menu. And he knew this was the vision. He races back to Seattle, all fired up, and presents this grand idea to the Starbucks owners. And they just flat out refused. See, they were purists. They saw themselves as part of this counterculture movement. They wanted to sell high-quality beans, not build some global empire. Their vision and his just couldn't have been more different. So what do you do? What do you do when the people you admire, the company you love, completely rejects your dream? Well, if you're Howard Schultz, you leave, and you decide to build it yourself. But of course, that came with a whole new mountain to climb. He quits and starts his own coffee shop concept called Il Giornale. But he needed money, a lot of it, about $1.6 million. So he starts pitching investors. He talked to 242 of them, and 217 said no. Just imagine hearing no over and over and over again for an idea you believe in more than anything. But he just kept going. The handful of people who said yes were all he needed. He finally opened his first shop, bringing that Italian coffee bar experience to Seattle. And guess what? It was a smash hit. He had proved the concept actually worked. Now, just a couple of years later, this incredible opportunity pops up, a chance for the ultimate comeback, a chance to not just compete with Starbucks, but to become Starbucks. So in 1987, the original owners decided they wanted to sell the company. Schultz scrambled, raised the cash, $3.8 million this time, and he bought the very company that had turned down his vision. He rebranded his own stores under the Starbucks name, and from there, it was just an explosion. They went public in '92, started expanding all over the world. He even had to come back as CEO in 2008 to get the company back on track and focused on its core values. But through all of that insane success, that IPO, the global expansion, he never forgot that image of his father defeated on the couch. He wasn't just building a business, he was trying to right a wrong from his childhood. He was building the company he wished his father had worked for. Seriously, Starbucks was one of the very first companies in America to offer full health insurance to part-time employees. That was totally unheard of. And later, they offered free college tuition. This wasn't just good PR. For Schultz, this was deeply personal. When you look at his whole journey, it really shows you how our biggest wounds can become our greatest strengths. His philosophy is so clear. Life will throw things at you, but you can't be a victim. You have to take responsibility, you have to seize the day, and you have to go out and build the future that you want. He built a global empire fueled by a painful memory of injustice. His story is just incredible proof that our deepest wounds can actually become our greatest missions. So it kind of leaves you with a question, right? What's your story? And what dream are you going to start building today?